When a new lens hits the market, it's easy to ignore it, especially when it doesn't come from one of the big names. But every now and then, a third-party brand quietly creates something special. Something that doesn't just compete on specs, but surprises in real-world use. That's exactly what happened with the 7Artisans AF35mm f1.8, a full-frame autofocus lens now available for Nikon Z and L cameras. At first glance, it looks simple. Compact, solid, a clean barrel with minimal markings. But the real story isn't in how it looks. It's in how it performs. Today, we are diving deep into what this lens is, how it behaves, and whether it's worth trusting a third-party option in a system dominated by Nikon's own glass. Let's begin with the basics. A lens that expands options. The 7Artisans AF35mm f1.8 is designed for full-frame mirrorless cameras. Until now, this lens existed mainly for Sony's E mount. But October marks a turning point. It finally arrives for Nikon Z mount and Leica's L mount users. This move instantly makes it one of the most affordable autofocus options for these systems. In a market where Nikon's own Nikon Z 35mm f1.8 costs roughly double, 7Artisans clearly targets creators who want quality without paying flagship prices. And that's important, because 35mm isn't just another focal length, it's a storytelling lens. It's the perfect middle ground between wide and standard. You can capture portraits, landscapes, street scenes, and even cinematic B-roll without switching lenses. So when 7Artisans decided to make this available for Z and L users, it wasn't just another release. It was a signal. A message that says, you don't need to spend a fortune to create something beautiful. Build and design. Holding the lens, you notice its weight first. It's slightly heavier than Nikon's version, about 50 grams more. That's not much, but you feel it in the hand. The build is solid, made mostly of metal, with a straight, clean design. Nothing flashy. It looks professional, understated, and functional. The focus ring turns smoothly. There's also a dedicated AF or MF switch, giving you instant control between auto and manual focus modes. A rare but welcome addition in this price range. The lens also includes a custom function button, something you don't usually see in third-party glass. You can assign it to whatever command suits your workflow, focus hold, exposure lock, or something creative. Then there's the aperture ring. It moves fluidly, without clicks, offering a seamless transition between f-stops. For video creators, that's a dream. You can adjust exposure without the distracting click sounds or sudden jumps in brightness. It's a small touch, but one that makes this lens stand out among budget options. Optical design. Now, let's talk optics. Inside, the lens uses 8 elements in 9 groups. On paper, Nikon's version is slightly more complex, with 9 elements in 11 groups. But more glass doesn't automatically mean better performance. Sometimes, a simpler formula delivers a more natural rendering, and that's what 7Artisans seems to be going for. The aperture diaphragm has 11 blades. That's a big deal. It produces smooth, rounded bokeh, especially noticeable when shooting wide open at f1.8. Highlights stay soft and circular, without the harsh polygonal edges that cheaper lenses often show. For photographers who care about background blur and light rendering, that's a pleasant surprise. The minimum focusing distance is officially 40 centimeters on paper, but in real-world use, you can actually get closer, around 39 centimeters before focus fails. That might not sound like much, but it means you can frame tighter shots and still achieve a dreamy depth of field. It's not a macro lens, but it gets close enough for detailed product photos or intimate portraits. In the field, the shooting experience. Imagine walking through a garden in early autumn. The air is clear. Colors are rich but soft. You lift your Nikon Z camera, attach the 7Artisans 35mm, and start shooting. The first thing you notice is how natural everything looks. The lens doesn't exaggerate contrast. It doesn't push color too far. Instead, it paints light softly, a balance between sharpness and atmosphere. When shooting wide open at f1.8, the image has a gentle softness to it. Not a lack of detail, but a cinematic, creamy feel. This gives photos and video a slightly vintage look, something that modern lenses often lose in their clini. Sharpness. Stop down to f2.8, and the picture tightens up. Edges sharpen, micro-contrast improves, and details pop. By f4, you're getting images that rival Nikon's native lens in clarity. But it's the way the lens renders transitions, from focus to blur, that makes it feel unique. The fall-off is smooth, almost film-like. This character makes it especially attractive for video shooters. If you've ever used a black ProMist filter to soften highlights and bloom light slightly, you'll appreciate what this lens does naturally. It has that gentle, cinematic glow built right in. Bokeh and rendering. Bokeh is where the 11-blade aperture shines. Light sources in the background appear smooth and round, even toward the edges. Yes, there's some cat-eye deformation near the corners, that's physics. But overall, the transition between sharp subject and creamy background is beautifully controlled. What's interesting is how this lens renders highlights. They don't bleed excessively. They just bloom softly, creating that nostalgic, almost analog atmosphere. For portraits, this look flatters skin tones. For city lights or nature, it gives a dreamy mood. When pointed at bright sources like reflections or the sun peeking through trees, the lens creates beautiful sunstars thanks to the 11-blade design. They're clean and symmetrical, adding a cinematic sparkle to light sources. It's a detail many users will appreciate, especially for night or golden hour shots. Autofocus and operation. This is 7Artisans' first wave of autofocus lenses, and it shows how much they've learned. The AF system uses a stepping motor, which is quiet and reasonably fast. Not quite as lightning quick as Nikon's native system. You'll notice a slight delay when shifting from near to far subjects. But it's consistent, accurate, and quiet enough for video recording. There's minimal focus hunting, even in low light. The lens locks on smoothly, especially when paired with modern Z cameras like the Nikon Z6 III or ZF. For continuous focus tracking, it performs reliably, though it's not built for fast sports or unpredictable motion. The focus breathing, that small change in framing as you adjust focus, is noticeable but not distracting. If you're shooting cinematic sequences and manually pulling focus, it's something to be aware of. But for static scenes or typical run-and-gun use, it's perfectly acceptable. As for focus noise, you'll hear a faint hum if you listen closely, but your camera's internal MIC won't pick it up. External microphones isolate it completely. That makes this lens suitable for vloggers and filmmakers who rely on in-camera audio. Image quality, the real test. Every lens looks good on paper. But what happens when you start shooting real images? The 7Artisans 35mm delivers a unique rendering style. It's not razor-sharp wide open, and that's not a flaw. It's a choice. Wide open, the image has a soft glow, particularly in highlights. This softness adds a cinematic texture that many creators actually prefer. Stop it down slightly, and the lens transforms. By f2.8 to f4, sharpness jumps significantly, especially in the center. By f5.6, it's crisp across the frame. Chromatic aberration is minimal for this class, though you'll see some purple fringing around bright edges if you shoot wide open against strong light. That's easy to correct in post. Vignetting is visible at f1.8, giving a subtle tunnel effect that actually enhances composition for portraits and street shots. It evens out completely by f2.8. Contrast is moderate, colors are neutral. The rendering feels natural, neither too warm nor cold. And paired with Nikon's color profiles or a flat video picture style, it grades beautifully. Even straight out of camera, tones are pleasing. Nothing feels overprocessed. For video creators. For video shooters, this lens is more than just a budget choice, it's a creative tool. Because of its soft rendering and smooth transitions, it gives footage a filmic touch. The manual aperture control lets you adjust exposure smoothly during recording, something many native Nikon lenses don't allow. That's a big advantage. The slight softness wide open makes faces look natural and flattering on camera. There's no harsh digital edge. It handles highlights gently, avoiding blown-out patches. And since it pairs beautifully with picture profiles like Nikon's flat or red LUTs used in color grading workflows, you can achieve a high-end cinemati. See look even on modest setups. In fact, users who've tested it on Nikon ZR, ZF-like cameras found it works harmoniously with the red color mode. Together, they produce a warm, vintage atmosphere, reminiscent of old film lenses but with modern autofocus convenience. Comparing to Nikon's native 35mm. Now, how does it compare with Nikon's own 35mm f1.8s lens? The Nikon is clinically sharp. It's near perfect optically, high resolution, low distortion, lightning-fast autofocus. But it's also sterile in some ways. Too perfect. The 7Artisans lens feels more organic, more human. It has character. Wide open, you get gentle fall-off, blooming highlights, and a softness that invites emotion. Stop it down, and it behaves predictably and professionally. It's not trying to replace Nikon's lens, it's trying to offer something different. And when you consider price, that difference matters. The 7Artisans costs about half as much. Half the price for nearly the same focal length, solid build, autofocus, and a unique visual tone. For many creators, that's a smart trade-off. Reliability and firmware. Every third-party lens carries one concern: firmware compatibility. With Nikon's frequent camera updates, some lenses have temporarily stopped working until manufacturers released new firmware. It's happened before with brands like Tamron and others. 7Artisans seems aware of this. They've included a USB port directly on the lens mount, allowing you to connect it to a computer and update firmware easily. That's a clever solution. It ensures future compatibility with Nikon's evolving systems. Still, there's always a small risk. If a new Nikon firmware update changes communication protocols, you might experience temporary issues. But as long as 7Artisans continue supporting these mounts, updates should fix those quickly. That's the reality of using third-party gear. Occasional patience is part of the deal. Final thoughts for Section 1. The 7Artisans AF 35mm f1.8 is not trying to be perfect. It's trying to be expressive. It's for photographers and filmmakers who value mood over mathematical perfection. It's for creators who want to tell stories with a lens that costs less but still inspires creativity. You get solid build quality, a functional design, quiet autofocus, and pleasing bokeh. You get a lens that feels at home on modern Nikon Z cameras, balanced, reliable, and versatile. And most importantly, you get a lens that delivers a look many people chase with filters and post-production effects. At around half the cost of Nikon's version, it opens doors for beginners, hobbyists, and professionals who want a backup lens with personality. Sure, there are compromises: a little focus breathing, a slightly slower AF response, a softer image at f1.8. But these trade-offs come with charm. They make images feel less digital, more emotional. And that's why lenses like this matter. Because in the end, photography and filmmaking aren't about perfection. They're about feeling. And this lens, in its own quiet, unassuming way, delivers exactly that.